What's up guys, welcome back to another PlayStation 5 video, and today we have leaked information about the hardware behind the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. So there's been recent leaks that have revealed new details on the hardware specifications of the PlayStation 5 and also the Xbox Series X. And a lot of this information actually comes from Eurogamer and specifically Digital Foundry. So they posted a video on it and they also released an article. So if you guys are interested in seeing more details about it, you guys can go and check out that. It'll be linked down in the description. But we have a lot of information today about the PlayStation 5, basically giving us like the exact teraflop numbers and hardware specifications of the PlayStation 5, because up till this point, we haven't had almost any confirmed information about it. But last April, there was actually a rumor going around about a specific AMD processor codenamed Gonzalo, and this was reportedly the processor for the PlayStation 5. But today we got new leaks that pretty much confirm that Gonzalo is the processor for the PlayStation 5, and it also gives us new insight to the hardware in Sony's upcoming machine. So this was leaked through an AMD employee storing files on GitHub, and they stored all these files there about like an upcoming APU, about upcoming processors that AMD is working on, and it's going to be codenamed Oberon. So that is what, instead of it being called Gonzalo anymore, now it's codenamed Oberon. So this data on GitHub was actually from apparently about 6 to 7 months ago, so it kind of lines up about the same time as Gonzalo. But also Digital Foundry and Eurogamer, they mentioned that it's very, very unlikely that almost anything has changed since then, or that will continue to change between now and holiday 2020, because of lots of different things going on behind the scenes in the process of this, because it takes a long time to actually validate silicon and to perfect it and actually like manufacture it all. Plus they also have to give time to get dev kits out to developers for months and months in advance so they can actually develop games for the system. That way when it launches, there's actually games to go along with it. So it's fairly likely, pretty much like 99% confirmed, that this is what's going to be powering the PlayStation 5, and that there's like almost no room for changes here, and it would just almost be impossible to do that. It would be like really, really time consuming, and it would also be really, really expensive to change almost anything from this point, because it's basically less than a year out at this point. So this is what the PlayStation 5's leaked specs are. It will have 8 Zen 2 cores with SMT, so that will have like 16 threads. So 8 cores, 16 threads. This is Zen 2, so this is the AMD's like newest CPU architecture that they released this year in 2019. So it's a pretty modern CPU architecture and has a lot of IPC increases over previous like architectures and stuff. And I mean, it's good that we're going to be getting like a modern architecture, something not based off of like mobile tech like we have at Jaguar back with the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. But also, Zen 2 is actually like a PC architecture too, so it should also hopefully make developing games for these systems just that much easier and like that much like smoother in between consoles and PC as well. So they don't give specific clocks for the CPU. They don't give like specific CPU clocks, so we don't know what these 8 cores are actually going to be clocked at. But we have information on the GPU, and this is that the GPU powering the PlayStation 5 will have 36 custom Navi compute units at 2000 megahertz, so at 2 gigahertz, and we're going to have 36 CUs. So that's actually pretty good. The reason why we're getting like 36 instead of something like 48 or 40 or something like that is probably just down to yields, and also because the clocks are going to be a lot higher. So if we try and bump up the CUs, then the yields are going to be a lot lower, because it's going to you're going to have a lot better yield to be able to yield 40, 44, or even like 48 CUs off of a single like silicon die, rather than, hey, if you find a silicon die that hey, maybe it has 38 good CUs, well, you just disable 2 of them and bam, then you got 36. So 36 CUs at 2000 megahertz, so 2 gigahertz, and that the memory is going to be GDDR6 memory, so just like the Xbox Series X, at 448 gigabytes per second, and it will also possibly be at 512 gigabytes per second, but they don't disclose the capacity. My guess on capacity, though, is that they're going to probably like match Xbox, match Microsoft's console with having 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. So it's fairly likely that we're going to get 16 in the Xbox Series X and 16 in the PlayStation 5. But back during April, the Gonzalo leak was actually saying that the PlayStation 5, the CPU behind it was going to be a 3.2 gigahertz CPU, which would honestly actually be pretty incredible to have 3.2 gigahertz on 8 cores with 16 threads. Like, that would give the PlayStation 5 such a huge CPU bump over the PlayStation 4 and even PlayStation 4 Pro. The games are really going to be able to take advantage of that and be a lot better this generation. 3.2 gigahertz is honestly not too bad, but that should be pretty good. And the leak also was saying that it was going to have a Navi graphics core running at 1.8 gigahertz. So this new leak says it's going to run at 2000, so at 2 gigahertz. But the old leak was saying 1.8, so it's possible that AMD and the PlayStation, they've actually been able to bump that up 200 megahertz and get it up to 2 gigahertz. And I think that's honestly probably for the best. That way they can get as much raw performance out of it as possible, especially with it having 36 CUs, 36 compute units. But there is apparently some express identifiers suggested that AMD was referring to the GPU as apparently a Navi 10 Lite. So apparently this GPU was going to have the same 40 CUs as the PC-based Navi 10 part, which is in the RX 5700 and 5700 XT. So that would be incredible, but it would have 4 CUs disabled. So just, to get better yields and stuff. But all in all, what that means is that the PlayStation 5, if you want to pull it up into teraflops, would be 9.2 teraflops. Now, teraflops aren't a great metric of performance. It's just a number. It doesn't really give you any direct metric on how the system is going to perform. But if you do compare that to the Xbox Series X, that has been leaked to be at 12 teraflops. So that would be very interesting for an Xbox Series X, the next generation Xbox, to launch at 12, and the next generation PlayStation, the PlayStation 5, to launch at 9.2. Now that would be a very interesting launch, because then that would mean that the Xbox is more powerful. I mean, it'd be kind of similar to the PlayStation 4 Pro versus the Xbox One X, but the real interesting thing here, I guess, would come down to price, because especially since they are going to be having 4 CUs disabled on this, and it's also going to be at 9.2 teraflops rather than 12, it's very likely that the PlayStation 5 will launch at $400 rather than, say, $500, which is basically what everybody is saying the Xbox Series X is going to launch at. It's going to be a $500 console. You can't really sell that for anything less than that without taking a major loss and major hit on just every single console you sell. They'd be losing hundreds of dollars on every single console they sell. But then again, that is definitely a viable strategy. I mean, pretty much every console they sell, even the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, every one of those consoles is also still sold at a loss. There's no console out there, at least to my knowledge, from Microsoft or Sony, that is actually profitable. They make all their money and all their sales from games and services like Xbox Live or PlayStation Plus. And Eurogamer and Digital Foundry also point out that, you can't really also compare 9 teraflops on the PlayStation 5 to, say, 6 teraflops on the Xbox One X, because of the different architecture differences between IPC increases and different things with memory and caching and stuff like that. So you can't really say that the PlayStation 5 is going to be 50% more powerful than the Xbox One X, because, it doesn't take that into account. It just takes out raw math of clock speed times by how many CUs and stuff. So you could do it that way, but with Zen 2 and with Navi, they're not created equal. The same CUs don't perform the exact same as the old ones did. So it is going to be more powerful than, it's not going to just be 50% more powerful. It's going to be more powerful than that. But there is just a difference there. So take that with a grain of salt that, 6 teraflops on the Xbox One X compared to 9 on this one. That's not comparable. What is comparable is the 9 teraflops on the PlayStation 5 to the 12 teraflops on the Xbox Series X. Another thing that we got from the leak is that the PlayStation 5 will use GDDR6 memory, which is the exact same as the RX 5700 graphics cards and AMD's Navi GPUs, but it will be 448 gigabytes per second. But they say that some tests have seen that it could actually get as high as 512 gigabytes per second, which would honestly be incredible and would be great for the system. And I'm assuming that's probably what we're also going to be getting from the Xbox Series X's, performance about that same amount, which can also kind of back up Microsoft's claim of having virtual memory through their SSD. So if we can get a really good NVMe SSD that could, maybe hit some speeds like that, 14 gigabits per second, we might be able to get stuff like that, but memory is definitely going to be a good thing with GDDR6. That'll be really great in this. But another thing that actually confirms that this is going to be the PlayStation 5, this is the processor behind the PlayStation 5, is that there's also like 2 other tests that are going on here, 2 other like different clock speeds and stuff that confirm that it's PlayStation 5. And that is that they have a Gen 1 mode and a Gen 0 mode. So the Gen 0 mode for the GPU, they're experimenting with different modes for it. The Gen 0 mode would be an 18 CUs at 800 megahertz, which would be a 1.83 teraflop GPU, memory bandwidth at 176 gigabytes per second, render output units at 32, and this is an exact match for the current base PlayStation 4. So that's pretty, there's no way that could just be a huge coincidence. And if that doesn't convince you enough, they also have a Gen 1 mode, which has 36 CUs at 911 megahertz, which is a 4.2 teraflops GPU. You might be, seeing where this is going. Has memory bandwidth of 218 gigabytes per second, render output units at 64, and this is an exact match for the PlayStation 4 Pro. So since they have, 3 different modes there, they have Gen 1, Gen 0, and then they have their base one, so the PlayStation 5 one, this is pretty much confirming that, okay, this is PlayStation 5 because they're also going to have hardware backwards compatibility built in, so it'll basically be able to emulate a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 4 Pro at the hardware level. It'll be able to basically use either 18 CUs for a base PlayStation 4, 36 for a PlayStation 4 Pro, and also the same 36 for the PlayStation 5. So you're gonna be able to do hardware backwards compatibility with this thing, and I mean it shouldn't really come as much of a surprise because consoles already kind of do that. With the PlayStation 4 Pro, if you turn on boost mode, it'll actually utilize the full power of the PlayStation 4 Pro, but if you don't have it on, it will just match the base PlayStation 5, so it'll just use the same 18 CUs at 800 megahertz rather than using all 36 of them at 911 megahertz. So it basically tweaks the system based on kind of what games can actually utilize it, and also if you're in boost mode or not. But it's kind of interesting though how they do this, because it's a little bit different than the way Xbox does it and that Microsoft does it with their system. Is that on Microsoft's system is that there's been actually rumors that if you play games that aren't Xbox X enhanced, then you're only going to be able to use half of the power of the Xbox One X. So that one has a 6 teraflop GPU. Well, if it's not an Xbox enhanced game, then you're only going to be able to use 3 teraflops. Okay, well that's still better than I believe the original Xbox One was 1.3 or something like that. So it's still definitely a bump. And even games that don't actually have Xbox One X enhancements, you can still see a definite performance jump, or even in some cases with games who have dynamic resolution scaling, you can see actual the game has higher resolution because you're playing it on an Xbox One X. Now, if developers actually make an Xbox One X enhancement patch, then of course they can utilize all 6 teraflops of the GPU, the whole performance of the console. It is interesting the way that Sony and Microsoft do it. They do it a little bit differently there, but it is still really, really cool. But as for the Xbox Series X though, we have some information on this, which is honestly really, really interesting. So the Xbox Series X is supposed to have 8 Zen 2 cores with SMT, so 8 cores, 16 threads, same as the PlayStation 5. We don't have any information about clocks, although the design of the Xbox Series X suggests that it will have really good cooling, which will allow for higher clocks on this system than, say, the Xbox One or the Xbox One X. So clock should be a lot higher with this, but the GPU in the Xbox Series X, now this is the Xbox Series X information here, these are leaks, we haven't heard about this before, and that we're going to have 56 custom Navi compute units at apparently 1700 megahertz. 56! And you compare that to the PlayStation 5's apparent 36. So this is a good and a bad thing, because it's good because you get a lot more performance. It can also be a bad thing because it also reduces the yields too, because trying to get 56 CUs that all behave properly and are all really good is going to be a lot harder than finding 36 of them. So this one will apparently run at 1700 megahertz, so 300 megahertz lower than the PlayStation 5. Now that's interesting though. They do say that the Xbox Series X will have GDDR6 memory, same as the PlayStation 5, but will be at 560 gigabytes per second. Now that is interesting. 560 gigabytes per second, whereas the PlayStation 5 has 448 with the possibility of 512. So basically, this thing has almost 100 gigabytes per second faster memory, or potentially like 40 or 50 gigabytes per second faster. So either way, it's supposed to be faster than the PlayStation 5, but that's very interesting as well, though. But I mean, you compare that to like the Xbox One X. Now, keep in mind though, you can't directly really compare these, so just kind of take this with a grain of salt. This is just for comparison's sake. This doesn't actually really like mean anything for performance. But the Xbox One X had 8 Jaguar cores at 2.3 gigahertz, had 40 GCN compute units. So in this one, I mean, it's GCN versus Navi, so that's a big difference there. But it also has 16 more CUs, and the Xbox One X had them at 1172 megahertz, whereas this one will have them at 1700. So it's pretty much a 500 megahertz jump on 16 more CUs. Plus, it's a brand new architecture with new IPC increases and stuff, so should be really, really good. And I mean, especially also if you compare that to the base Xbox One too. So we're getting a big jump here, and this whole thing is pretty great, dude. So basically, in the end, it means that the Xbox Series X is gonna have 12.2 teraflops GPU, and that the PlayStation 5 will have 9.2. So an extra 3 teraflops. Now, that's not a ton, that's like almost just about like a 25% increase. So you're getting like 25% more powerful hardware out of the Xbox Series X. But I think that the big thing that will actually like affect console sales and really come down to the success of the console is down to price. So Sony's PlayStation 5 here with all these leaks really make it a lot likely, like more likely, that it will be a $400 console, and that, you know, with Microsoft's 56 CUs on their system, given a 12 teraflop GPU, really seems likely that they're going to have a $500 console. Now, I don't think this is a good move for Microsoft. I think that they need to match Sony and either have a $500 console, same as PlayStation 5, or they need to have a $400 console as well. Like, I think it's good that they have a more powerful console, but that's not how like you're going to be able to sell it to the average person. The average person cares more about price than performance. You know, the average person's not going to want to drop $500 when they can go, the PlayStation 5 is almost as good, but it's $100 cheaper. I'll just buy that. So it could be a kind of a bad move from Microsoft, but that's also where rumors of their Xbox Lockhart console come in. Although we haven't heard about this, but there's been rumors that it hasn't been canceled, but it's just kind of being delayed a little bit too. So as time goes on, I'm sure we'll hear more about that too. But that is the new recent rumors and leaks and stuff about the PlayStation 5. PlayStation 5 is going to be 9 teraflops, and it's going to be a pretty beastly console. Like, it's definitely going to be a lot more powerful than the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro. Over double the performance of the PlayStation 4 Pro, but might not quite reach the same levels as the Xbox Series X though. But who knows, maybe Sony will be able to change things before launch. I mean, they could also, even just by having 36 CUs, they might be able to clock it higher than 2 gigahertz. They might be able to get it up to maybe like 2.2, which would push the teraflop count up and make it more competitive with the Xbox Series X. And I mean, they don't, you know, since they have the same exact CUs, they probably wouldn't have to increase the price on the console at all. You know, like they would just maybe have to change the form factor for cooling by clocking the GPU a little bit higher though. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about this? PlayStation 5 at 9.2 teraflops and the Xbox Series X at 12.2. I think, once again, it just comes down to price. So let me know what you guys' thoughts on this are in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys go and check out Digital Foundry and Eurogamer's coverage on this as well. And I'll see you guys next time.